right, hello everyone, and welcome to our newest Echo Live. My name is Sierra, and I am one of the resident astronomers here at the Michigan Science Center. Now, you guys may have noticed, but it's getting colder and colder outside. That means we're getting closer and closer to winter. And with winter comes new constellations. Today, we're going to be talking about our fall constellations. You guys get a chance to see them before they're gone from the sky until next year. I have a lot of very exciting things to show you guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and check out some of the things that we can see in our sky right now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring up what the sky looks like today. And actually, what the sky looks like if you go outside right now. Now, I know this image doesn't really look a lot like Detroit, but imagine Detroit that was very, very flat and didn't have a lot of tall buildings. This is actually where the sun is in the sky currently. Now, because it's fall, that means that the sun is getting lower and lower and lower in the sky, which means it's making a shorter and shorter path along the sky. That's why we're starting to get shorter days and longer nights. Wow, maybe that doesn't mean we get enough sunlight as we're used to, but it does mean that we have plenty of time for stargazing. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is we are going to fast forward in time a little bit. So I want all of us to strap into our imaginary time machine. Put your seatbelts on. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move forward in time. What that means is that the sun is slowly going to start sinking lower and lower into the horizon. Our sun rises in the east and then sets in the west, and then gives us this beautiful sunset. You know what? I'm actually going to speed up time a little bit faster. So the sun's setting faster and faster, try not to get dizzy. And when the sun sets, we get a nice dark sky. So everything that we're seeing in the sky right now are stars. Almost everything, I should say. We're going to look at some things that aren't quite stars a little bit later during our show today. What I'm going to do is we're going to start off looking at our stars in the northern sky. Now, the north is very, very important for stargazing because we can find some very important constellations. These constellations that I'm talking about are circumpolar. That means that we can find them all year round. Possibly the most notable circumpolar constellation is used to find this star right here. Does anyone actually know the name of this star? I'll give you a hint. It's directly above this giant floating letter N. Does anyone have a guess? Maybe. What star could this be? Well, this star is actually our North Star. And it gets that name because it always points directly due north. Now, this North Star, or Polaris, which is its other name, is not actually the brightest star in the sky. In fact, just looking around at our sky right now, we can see a lot of stars that are brighter than it, like Vega over here or Capella. The North Star is closer to the 50th brightest star in the night sky, so it's not actually all that bright. However, what makes it useful is the fact that it points the same direction every single day without fail. While all of the other stars and objects in the sky will appear to move, the North Star won't. The only object that never appears to move in the nighttime sky. So what that means is that we can always use it to find our direction north. Now, the North Star is a part of its very own constellation. So this is actually called the Little Dipper. And you guys are probably also familiar with our Big Dipper, which we can use in order to find our North Star. However, today's show is not about the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, because like I said, they're circumpolar. We can find them all year round. So just so you guys know where they are currently, we have our Little Dipper up here, and then our Big Dipper is actually pretty small and close to the horizon right now. As you can see, we can't actually make out a lot of the shape of the Big Dipper. And in fact, we're getting a lot of the shape of the constellation the Big Dipper is a part of, which is called Ursa Major. So the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper are actually just asterisms and are part of larger constellations called the Little Bear and the Big Bear. So I'll bring up our Little Bear and our Big Bear real quick. Like I said, we're not going to spend too much time on them because you can see these constellations all year round, and we're going to focus on our fall constellations. But if at any point you want to try and find our North Star, just look at the handle of our Big Dipper here. These two bright stars in a straight line, follow them, draw an imaginary line up and up and up, and then you'll get to the North Star. So that's how you find the Big Dipper and the North Star, no matter what time of year it is. Now we are going to actually focus on some of our fall constellations. So these are constellations that we'll only be able to see in the night sky for a little bit longer. Actually, the fall is one of my favorite times to talk about constellations because there is a huge story that we can see right now in our nighttime sky. So the first constellation we're going to be looking at, as we can see, is almost directly due east. This constellation, when you're looking for it, will kind of look like a stethoscope. So let's see, we'll bring it up. What else do you think this constellation looks like? Stethoscope is what I get the most. Sometimes I get a slingshot. What do you guys think? A person with legs but no upper body? The cool thing about the stars is that you can look up and see whatever you want. What I'm going to be sharing with you guys are our official constellations, but that doesn't mean you have to see what I see. You can see whatever you want in the night sky. There's no one to tell you you're wrong. This official constellation, however, is called Perseus. So I'm going to bring up the art for Perseus, and we're going to hear a little bit about his story. So Perseus was an ancient Greek hero, actually probably one of the most famous Greek heroes of all time. You maybe have even heard of one of his descendants, a hero named Hercules. But before Hercules, we had Perseus, and Perseus was on a quest. He was actually trying to slay the Gorgon Medusa. Now, Medusa was a woman who had snake fur hair, and the sight of her eyes can actually turn you into stone. Luckily, Perseus was very, very clever, and he brought a shield where one side was a mirror. He held it up to Medusa's gaze, and she turned herself into stone. Perseus ended up leaving her cave and taking her head as a trophy. And in fact, you can see him holding her head right here in our artwork. A little bit gruesome, but luckily, Perseus was able to use Medusa's head to do a lot of good. The first good that came out of this act is Medusa's blood actually spilled out into a nearby river. And when the blood met the river, a great beast came out. But this wasn't a scary beast. It was actually a very, very helpful one. I'm going to bring up this next constellation, which is the beast that later on helped Perseus out. This constellation also goes by a couple different names. One of my favorites is the Great Square. So in order to find this constellation, look about, let's see, right now we're about southeast. So you're looking for a constellation that looks like 4 bright stars in the shape of a square. Here's where you can find it right over here. So this is the Great Square. And if I zoom out a little bit more, we can actually get the full shape of this constellation, which, as you see, also comes with not only a body, which is the Great Square, but also 2 front-facing legs, as well as a head. So looking at this image, what do you guys think that this might be? Any guesses? What could it be? Something with a big head and 2 arms. And it's something that also helped Perseus out. I'll let you guys know. It's probably one of the most famous creatures in all of Greek mythology. But this is actually the winged horse, Pegasus. So Pegasus sprung out of the lake. And Perseus was so overjoyed to get a new animal companion, as I think we all would be in that circumstance, that he immediately jumped onto Pegasus and he rode him off into the sunset. Now, while Perseus was enjoying his time on Pegasus, he noticed something strange. As he was flying over the ocean, over the coast, he heard someone screaming. So he lowered Pegasus to the ground and he actually found a woman chained to the rock. And that brings us to our next constellation. So this constellation is pretty easy to find once you find our great big square up in the sky. Now, this star right here connects to our next constellation. The easiest way to see this constellation is to look for 4 bright stars right here that are kind of in a curved shape. This is the back of the Princess Andromeda. So as we can see right now in the night sky, Andromeda isn't having a very good time. In fact, what had happened was her mother and her father actually were the ones who chained her to a rock by the sea. pretty bad parenting skills, if I do say so myself. Now, the reason they did that is that her mother was an incredibly vain woman. I'm going to turn the sky a little bit more. So now we're facing more the north. That's because these next constellations are actually circumpolar as well. So this constellation is called Cassiopeia, and Cassiopeia was a queen in ancient Greek mythology. Now, you can find this constellation all year round because it's circumpolar. And it usually looks like a W, or some time of the years, it looks like an M. So if you look to the north and you see a W or an M, or maybe even a backwards E, like it kind of looks like right now, you're looking at the Queen Cassiopeia. Like I said, she was incredibly vain, which is a hard thing to do by Greek mythology standards. And she was boasting that she and her daughter were the most beautiful people in all of the land. When she did that, she accidentally offended some nearby naiads. Naiads are daughters of the Greek god Poseidon. So they went to their father and they were like, Poseidon, father, you have to do something to punish Cassiopeia and her daughter. And Poseidon's like, I got this. What's the best punishment? Sea monsters. So he had Cassiopeia chain her daughter to a rock by the sea to be eaten by a sea monster. Let's get Cassia up there on the screen. As you can see right now, she is sitting on her throne and looking rather vainly into a mirror. Even when she's up there in the star, they can't help but making fun of her. But let's go back and check on Andromeda. So Andromeda, like we said, is currently chained to a rock about to be eaten by a sea monster. And in fact, that sea monster is right below her and getting closer and closer. Let's bring up our sea monster. So as you can see, he's taking up a large portion of the sky. That's because the sea monster, Cetus, is incredibly dangerous and not to be trifled with. Let's bring Cetus up right now. So Cetus is made of slightly dimmer stars in the constellations we've been talking about previously, but you can find his general shape in our southeastern sky right now. So where we left off in this story is that Andromeda is about to be eaten by Cetus when Poseidon heroically gets in between Andromeda and the monster, holds up Medusa's head, and turns Cetus into stone, thereby saving the princess and actually saving that entire coastline. After he did that, he fell madly in love with Andromeda, took her away from her terrible family, and ended up marrying her, and they had 7 kids and lived happily ever after. This is one of my favorite stories to tell because in Greek mythology, they don't usually get a happy ending. So I really like the ones that end rather well for all of our heroes. To make note of their heroic deeds while on Earth, the gods decide to throw up this story into the sky to let us know that happy endings can still happen. So we had a lot of fun talking about the different constellations we can see in the star right now, but we're going to change gears a little bit here. Instead of showing you guys some more stars, we're going to be looking at some planets. So already right now, I've had us turn to face our southwestern sky. I am going to bring down our constellations, and we are going to look at some planets. Now, the way to tell the difference between planets and stars are that stars twinkle. You've probably heard of that song before, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and that song is completely accurate. What that means is that stars twinkle in the night sky. So they go in and out of focus, getting brighter and then losing brightness. Planets, on the other hand, do not twinkle. They're a constant source of light that you can see in the sky. What that means is that if you see a bright object that's not twinkling, you're probably looking at a planet. So there are 2 planets that are up right now that we can see at night. One of them is getting lower and lower to the horizon. So I'm going to bring them both up now. So right now we can see Jupiter and Saturn. Just so you guys are aware, right now we are looking at about the sky at around 8 p.m. So what that means is that these planets are going to be sinking below the horizon earlier and earlier in the day as we get further into winter. So definitely get the chance to check out these planets while we still have the chance. The first one we're going to be looking at is actually this planet right here called Saturn. So these planets are both available with the naked eye, Jupiter is going to be the brighter planet you can see in the southwest, and Saturn will be a little bit closer to the horizon and a little bit dimmer. But let's actually fly a little bit closer to Saturn. So Saturn, as you can see, is surrounded by moons. Saturn actually has more moons than any other planet in our solar system, over 80 and still in counting. In fact, these really bright rings that make up Saturn's appearance are actually also just mini moons. So these rings are completely solid. They're actually composed of tiny rocks that range from the size of a small grain of sand to a large house. And these rocks are made up of water ice and dust. Because it's made up of water ice, it means it reflects sunlight in this really appealing way. So we're able to see the rings very, very well, even though all of our gas giant planets have rings. Saturn's are just the ones that are most well known. Speaking of gas giant planets, let's go ahead and leave Saturn behind. And now we're going to go visit our other planet, the gas giant Jupiter. Jupiter is, in fact, the largest planet in our solar system. In fact, you might hear Jupiter be called a failed star. That's because Jupiter is made up of hydrogen and helium gas, the same things that stars are made up of, including our sun. However, Jupiter never got quite big enough to become a star. So instead of igniting its core in nuclear fusion, it just became a planet in orbit around our star like all of the other planets. Let's go ahead and we're going to leave Jupiter behind. And we're going to go back to where we started our show. So looking up at our sky. I have one last thing to show you guys. This is something that you can only see in places that are incredibly dark. But you might notice that here in the center of my sky is a brighter patch of sky. What we're actually looking at is the Milky Way, which is the galaxy that we all live in. So if you ever have the chance to go someplace incredibly dark, you might be able to see this place that we call our home, the Milky Way galaxy. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. I had a lot of fun talking to you guys about the different things that we can see in our night sky right now. And hopefully I'll be talking to you all very, very soon when it's time to cover our winter constellations. All right, goodbye for now, everyone.